Hey guys.
What's with the wink and the gun?
I don't know. It just came natural.
No, it's not natural.
All right, start over. Hey guys, my name is Kevin Litton. We are so glad you have joined us for this series. This is my wife, Ashley.
Hey guys.
And we're glad you're here. I'm the Global Kids Pastor here at Liberty, and we've titled this series for the next 5 weeks, starting tonight, Parenting Simple? You gotta kind of tilt your head a little bit, and it's because it's a question mark. Is parenting simple? All right? And in fact, we really struggled to find the title for this series, and that really just wasn't simple either, Ashley.
No, it wasn't. I mean, anybody that's a parent, you know that there's nothing simple about parenting. And especially as we think about this last year, I'm sure that you guys are all right there with me. There was nothing simple about parenting through the pandemic, through 2020, right? And even still today, but you know, as we think about all the things that were suddenly put on our plates, man, I don't know about you, but I crushed under the weight of that massive list of everything that we were beginning to take on top of just parenting in normal life. So Kevin and I just kept going back to everybody is, I think, craving to figure out a way to make things a little bit more simple. So hence the name, Parenting Simple?
Yeah, exactly. And so we know, and we know that you guys know, that parenting is absolutely, it's not simple at all. And we don't ever want anything we say in this series to make you feel like you're not doing things right, or that things are just so simple, how come I can't do it, things like that. In fact, as we were trying to figure out the title of this series, the way I kind of described it one time, if you remember, Ashley, is I'm a soccer coach. I coach my son's soccer team. And, you know, kids, when they play soccer, or really any sport for that matter, they kind of want to be the hero. Like, they want to be the one to take the shot. They want to be the one to score. They want to be the one to make this long pass down the field so that we can get to the goal faster, and they can be the one with that big kick. But sometimes, really the best play to make is just a simple, like a 5-yard kind of a pass, just a short, simple thing. And it's kind of similar in parenting, we believe. Really because, you know, sometimes as parents, when we are going through those struggles, when our kids aren't doing what we want them to do, what we think they should do, and we want to have that quick fix, right? But sometimes it's just the simple things that we do in the moment over time that can really lead them to where we want them to go. And so we want you guys to understand that. Here's the thing, guys. God has given us some really simple instructions. You know, when we lead our families, God has given us some really simple instructions, but carrying those simple instructions out are not always simple, right? And so we're gonna find in these instructions themselves that that God really elevates, that He knew from the very beginning the struggles we were gonna have. Like, He knew that. He knew it from long ago. That's how big of a God He is. And He knew that about me. He knew I was gonna struggle. He knew we were gonna struggle as parents. He knew that about you, yeah? And no matter what your family looks like, you might be a single parent. You might be a home that has 2 parents in the home. You might be a parent of really young kids, or maybe you're a parent of much older kids, or maybe it's all that kind of combined together. But we really hope that you commit to joining us for the rest of tonight, as well as the next 4 weeks, because we hope that you're gonna like it. We hope on Facebook and wherever you see this. We also hope that you'll share it, that you'll tell your friends about it. You'll let other parents know about it, your neighbors, your coworkers. Let them know that we're gonna be talking about parenting over the next few weeks. But we also want you to comment on here. Ask us questions, maybe just questions that you have. Tell us your stories. But we're gonna tell you right now, we don't claim to know all there is to know about parenting. We're not perfect parents, and I think you might even hear some of that as we go along in this series as well.
That's right. Yeah, I can't say enough about what Kevin just said to you guys about sharing your stories. We want to hear from you. For us, that's the best part of this, is really walking alongside you and communicating with you. So if you have anything that you want to say, be sure to comment. Let us know what you think. Share any of your story. We'd love to hear it. But that said, I feel like before we encourage you guys to share your story with us, we need to go ahead and share some of our story. It's definitely not perfect, but tonight we're going to just kick things off. First of all, I feel like, Kevin, maybe you should tell everybody how long you've been here at Liberty, how all of that got started.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So I've been on the pastoral staff here at Liberty. This is actually my second time. And I was here, started here over a decade ago.
2010.
2010.
So it was 11 years ago.
You're gonna find in this whole series that she's much better with those details than I am. But I've been here 2 different times. I was first the kids pastor at Liberty Hampton campus when it was just the one campus only. We were here for a couple years, then God moved us back to Alabama at a church there for a couple years. Alabama is where I'm originally from. It's where I met Ashley, and we kind of got started in ministry there. But then, after those couple years in Alabama, Pastor Grant called again, and he asked, or he let us know that Liberty was in the process of starting a third campus. The Harborview campus has already started, and we were in the process of starting the Greenbrier campus. And he wanted to know if I would pray about coming back to help launch that campus, and then also eventually to step back and focus kind of on the whole of our kids ministry across campuses and lead our incredible Liberty Kids staff as well. And so, when in that process, we already knew we loved Liberty. We didn't leave here because we were mad about anything the first time. We just really felt like God was leading us to go back to Alabama. But we loved the church. We loved Hampton Road so much. We really felt fortunate to kind of have the opportunity to already have a family built in here, and to go to a place that it already kind of felt like home to us as well. And so we've been back here now for 6 years.
6 years.
6 years, right? And I'm personally grateful for that. I'm grateful to get to lead a team in order to minister to kids, to minister to families along the way, at all of our campuses. But truly, I can't do the things that I do without my wife, Ashley.
That said, I'm Ashley. I think you introduced me at the beginning. But anyway, I just want to say, first of all, this is way out of my comfort zone to be sitting in front of a camera. I would so much rather that if you were having the conversation with us, you were actually sitting here with us around a table and just in person having a discussion. But it is what it is. This is the way we're doing it tonight. And by now we're all used to screens, Zooms, all of that. So I guess it's not a big deal. But I thought I should introduce our kids, even though they're not here with us.
That's good, yeah.
We have 3 kids. Our oldest is Oliver, and anybody that knew us from our first time here, you would have known Oliver. He was 6 months old when Kevin came on staff the first time. So he's now 11, and Oliver is our quiet one. He is a reader. That's something that he and I have in common. We love to read books. He also plays soccer, and he's just kind of recently developed a interest in drawing, so he's pretty good at that. That's Oliver. Our second is Isaac, and Isaac he is going to be 9 at the end of this month, so he's got a birthday coming up. Isaac, if anybody knows him, you understand that he lives up to his name. His name means he laughs. Isaac means he laughs. And if there's anybody in our family that causes laughter, it's him. So he is our funny kid. He's the life of the party. He also loves candy, and he's
Lots of candy.
Our neighbor just gave him 5 pounds of bubble gum. So he is a happy camper with all of that gum. Anyway, he's also super creative. So that's Oliver, Isaac. And last but definitely not least, our third is Sydney. And she is our only girl and our youngest, and she is 6. And I like to describe her by saying she's equally Spitfire and a softie, because she is spunky and confident, but she's always also very soft-hearted.
And loud.
She carries
very loud.
All the volume that our family could ever need. And side note, she is obsessed with gymnastics. So yeah, so that's our family.
Yeah. And so that's our crew. Ashley, actually, she wears many hats. Now, for you moms out there, you know this very well. You wear many hats as a mom, right? Well, Ashley's a mom. She's my wife, which is probably the hardest thing to deal with, right? But she's got a whole list of other things that she's involved in, that she loves to do, enjoys. But she's also, you may not know this, she's also part of our Liberty Kids staff part-time as well. And her title is, it's really fancy. It's Global Kids Groups Specialist.
That's right.
Specialist, yeah. And so that's really just a fancy way of saying that one of the things that she does is she helps to resource our staff at every campus with resources to help lead parents, to help lead kids, to help lead their leaders as well, as they lead groups of kids and to partner with parents and that sort of thing, in order to help our staff also focus on those relationships with them so they don't have to worry about some of the smaller details as well. So that's in a nutshell. Would you say it any differently?
Yeah, no, I think, that's basically what I do. A lot of behind the scenes stuff. So it's unique in that I love being able to, I haven't always been on staff, that's just been in the last couple years. But it's so exciting to be part of what God is doing here at Liberty on a staff basis. It's just an incredible thing that we've got going on here. But as a family, since Kevin is global, and maybe if you're at one of the campuses, you've seen Kevin there in Liberty Kids. But our family, we call our home campus Greenbrier. We've been there ever since it launched. And so the kids and I are there every Sunday. Kevin is there a couple Sundays out of the month. But that's our home campus. So on Sundays, I'm not on staff. On Sundays, I am a volunteer, just like maybe many of you. I do serve on the Liberty Kids Life team there at Greenbrier. In elementary, I help out Pastor Logan Brunson, who's the kids pastor at that campus. I help him by coaching our elementary group leaders. But I also do help in preschool too. Rena Lang is our preschool director there, and I help fill in here and there where there might be a need in preschool. So love being a part of that campus, but I have sort of a unique experience in that when it comes to what we do at Liberty and Liberty Kids, I get to look through many different lenses. So I get to be on staff. I get to be a part of the life team, so volunteer. But I'm also a parent, which is a very key lens to look through in terms of relating with you guys who are watching. So it's kind of unique that I get to have my hands in all of those different things. But really everybody, we all have a unique story, right? And I just think that's such an important thing that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah,
specifically.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. And even throughout the series, like we said earlier, we want to hear your stories, and everybody has a different story, and we want to make sure that we're not, we don't hold up a perfect picture of family with that, because there is no perfect picture of family. If you look in the Bible and Scripture and look at all the people and the families in Scripture, there's no perfect family whatsoever, and God still uses those people. And so we all have a different story. And so I love that idea. It's what makes us unique, and God takes those details, He weaves all those details together, and so each of us have an individual story, a unique story that God has intricately put all that together with. And so it's pretty cool. And it's really incredible that this huge God, I mean, think about that, how big God is, how huge He is. I mean, the one who made the universe and everything in it, and so this God, He cares so much about each and every single one of us, in order to pay special attention even to those small details in our lives. With that said, like I said, our stories are all different. Before Ashley and I met, we had different stories in our lives. Our story is different than your story that you have in your life and your family. And so I'm thankful that we're able, though, when it comes to parenting, there's lots of ways that we can find common ground because of those similar type of shared experiences that we have as parents. And so, Ashley, I do think it's important for us to really explain a little bit maybe about kind of how we got started doing the things that we do, to kind of help relate to you guys as well. Because, our story, it really happens to kind of start with no intention of going into full-time ministry, like as a career. Like we had no intention of that.
No.
I certainly had no desire or no intention of becoming a pastor as well.
No, and I it was not in the cards for me to be a pastor's wife. Like, I had no plans of going that route. So it's funny, but here we are. But we're going to tell you a little bit about how that all came about. We just mostly want to point that specific thing out to you because more than likely, if you're watching, the majority of you are not pastors or pastors' wives. And so I just want to be clear that we're like everybody on staff at Liberty, like we're all just folks, like we're all just normal people. So real normal people with real struggles.
Maybe not all normal, but we're all real
well,
people.
Nobody's normal.
Right, I'm not.
We tell our kids it's cool to be weird because normal's boring. So anyway, there you go. But so we're gonna rewind our stories a little bit. Like Kevin said, we kind of each came into it having our own separate stories. But pre-Kevin, okay, I was in college. Okay, we'll start there. Not gonna get into like all the years leading up to that. But in college at University of Delaware, okay, so I was an East Coaster. And I was about a year and a half into my undergrad at the University of Delaware, and just through a series of events, really felt like I needed to leave. I was not living a life that I felt like was honoring God for sure. I was in a point in my life where I wanted to get to know God better. But I knew that as long as I was in the surroundings that I was in, that was not going to happen. The distractions were too high. And so anyway, all that to say, I quit school. I moved home to, at that point, South Dakota. My parents, side note, my parents literally moved me into my freshman dorm at the University of Delaware, and that day drove across the country and moved to South Dakota. So I have been on my own since I was 18. Literally on my own. But anyway, so after that year and a half of college, quit, moved back home. My parents said, come on home. So I did, and lived there for a little bit, tried to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. Eventually decided I needed an adventure to find myself. So I did. I packed up my car and I moved to Alabama, where I literally knew nobody. I just wanted to seize the adventure, or an opportunity for an adventure. And so that's what I did. I moved all the way down to Alabama, and I just remember feeling like excited, like equal parts excited, but also nervous about the unknown, right? So like anytime, if any of you have ever done that before, gone on an adventure, sometimes it's hard to see how the pieces are gonna fit together and how things are gonna work out. So now at age 38, I mean, I was 20 when that happened. At age 38, it's awesome to be able to look back and see how God has his hand in every single bit of the process. But anyway, so 20 years old in Alabama, didn't know a soul, ended up finding a room that a woman who I knew through a contact, like, I mean, it was crazy, the string of events, but she was renting out a room in her house. She was recently divorced, middle-aged woman, had this random like in-law suite in her house, and so she rented it out to me. So I'm telling you all of that because it was her that said, oh, hey, like in Alabama, everybody just assumes you go to church. Okay, and that was weird for me because I'd never lived in the South. It was peculiar, but anyway, you know, as I moved in my stuff, and she said, so where are you gonna go to church? I said, well, it's funny you mention that. Like, I would actually like to try to find a church. And so she knew of this church that she had heard good things about in the city that we lived in. And so, so anyway, I tried going there, and that's where I met Kevin.
I mean, she walked in that first day, and it was like this light just kind of went over my head. You could hear the music playing, everything else blacked out. It was like love at first.
That's not how it was at all.
Okay,
it's
all right.
not how.
Well, I'd been going to this particular church really since it began, and it hadn't been that long since it began, but I'd been going there since it began. And I was actually on the verge at that point of graduating with my undergrad from the University of South Alabama, go Jags, and I was getting a degree in sport and event marketing. I was gonna go work for a sports team and work in their marketing and promotions department. I just knew it. That's what I wanted to do, right? You know what? I even, at one point, the basketball coach from that school, that college, went to our church. And so I tried to, of course, hit him up, not for a job, of course, but to just, figure out how I could help out, right? I even got to dress up as the Jaguar mascot one Sunday because we were having a church gathering at one of the basketball games, and so I was helping promote it. So
I did not know that you were a mascot.
it was one time.
I've never known this about you.
I don't like to talk about it a lot. But so anyway, that's what I was gonna do. I was gonna be working in sports stuff and that kind of thing. And it was during that time we started dating. And it was during those dating years that I worked a couple different sales jobs because I wasn't getting that sports marketing job. It wasn't
The mascot
happening.
wasn't working out.
The mascot didn't work out for me. It doesn't pay a lot, especially when you volunteer for it. But then we got engaged eventually through that, and then I decided to get my real estate license because I thought, you know what, I'll have a freer schedule. Real estate agents can make more money than I'm doing in my sales job. And so I've always been big on, wanting to provide for my family and feeling like I should. And so that's what I did. I got my real estate license and still, at that point, had no intention of becoming a pastor.
I honestly feel like while we were dating, this is not a bad thing I have
no idea what she's about to say right now.
I feel like if you were trying to become a pastor, I wouldn't have married you. But I'm so thankful that that's where God has brought us. I just thought I'd put that in there. Because God's timing is perfect. He knew that apparently I needed to fall in love with a Jags mascot instead of a pastor. Okay, anyway, sorry, I just had to put that in there. Okay, so we were engaged. Kevin had graduated. You were working on your real estate license. And at that point, I was deep into being involved in this church. Kevin was too. We'd both volunteered in all sorts of different capacities. But since we were engaged, we really felt like it was time for us to do something together. So we didn't know what that was. We just knew that we were open to serving somewhere together on a regular basis at our church. So it's funny. It's I feel like word gets out, right? And we know this now, from a staff point. What I do at Greenbrier, a lot of it has to do with recruiting volunteers. So I know if there's somebody that's they're open to it, because then it's you pounce. But anyway, we were those people.
On that note, if you're attending one of our campuses and you're not serving anywhere,
That's right.
Liberty Kids is a great place for you to do that.
Shameless plug. Anyway, so we were those people though, so we understand. And so at the time, there is somebody on staff in the kids department at the church who called me and just said, I've heard that you and Kevin are just great with kids, which was hilarious to me because honestly, neither of us had any experience with kids. We'd filled in a couple times. Like I'd said, we'd volunteered in all sorts of different capacities. So we had filled in a couple times, I think, maybe in the kids area there. But we had no experience with kids. And so it was funny. She said, well, I heard you guys are good with kids. We really need a kindergarten group leader. A couple would be perfect. And what do you think? We'd love for you to do this. And after I chuckled, I'm sure, and I wanted to hear more about what exactly that meant. And so for me, the kicker was she was explaining a little bit about, their mission, their purpose, and what they do in their kids area. And the way she explained it wasn't hey, come and teach Sunday school. It was, hey, we want you to come and we want you to form relationships with this group of kids, one group of kids. We want you to lead activities on Sundays, reinforcing the Bible stories that they're being taught. We want you to build relationships with their parents. We want you to be somebody that they can trust, kids and parents. We want you to be a godly example for them in their lives. And so that sounded good. That sounded like something I felt like maybe we could at least give a shot together. And so we said yes. The condition was, though, and this was not my fault, this was Kevin's fault, but we committed to 6 months. We were like, we'll do this, but I'm just gonna be honest. This is like a 6-month commitment, and then we'll see, we'll reevaluate. That was what Kevin.
Thanks for blaming me
Kevin
for that,
said.
but it's true. I had always seen myself as, I told you about the sports ministry or sports marketing thing. I love sports, I still do to this day, and I'd always seen myself, and I'd always been. We had like church softball, we had church basketball, we had all sorts of stuff at our church at the time that I always saw myself serving in those capacities, and I'd enjoyed doing it as well. And so working with kids at the time was like the furthest thing from my radar. And so, I kind of, in my own mind, this is terrible, but in my own mind, I thought, hey, we'll give them 6 months, not the full year they were asking for. We'll commit to 6 months, and then I can go back to serving in the sports ministry of things. And so, and like I said, that's terrible. But I will tell you this: from the first day, this was a group of not just kids. This is a group of kindergartners. So if you've had a kindergartner, if you have one, or even been around a group of them, it's not an easy group to lead. It's not. And so, but from that first day, God just changed me, like from the moment we stepped foot in there, and just fell in love with it. Ashley was good at that time of like doing the teaching part, and I was the fun, goofy one, and sometimes I feel like I still am that today.
Do you know that sorry, this is just like a side note on that. I will never forget the first Sunday, because we wanted like to try really hard to be like cool and fun and relatable to kindergartners.
Well, I'd have to try hard.
We brought our tent. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Because like we were talking about Abraham and him like being willing to go where God told him to go, and we brought our tent and we put it up in the room.
I do remember that.
And we held our, we sat in a group circle inside the tent in the classroom.
It was good stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So leading that group of kindergartners, though, I'm telling you what, God used that. It was through we had some incredible leaders. She mentioned the woman who called, Miss Teresa, and Pastor Garrett at the time as well, and Miss Julie. All those people were just incredible people that led us to do this and led us along the way to see what this was like. And it was really a start of a big journey for us that kind of led us to what we're going to be spending the next few weeks with you talking about. We've really believed this for a long time, that church, it shouldn't just be about what you do on Sundays. Long before we came to Liberty, if you've been around Liberty for any period of time at all, if you even online or at one of our campuses, you have heard the phrase, it's not just church, it's life. I absolutely love that phrase, that it's not just church, it's life. Because to us, it makes sense. Because, when you're simply just showing up on Sundays, and that's it, it's like that's basically just like checking off a box. And, and so for us, that wasn't us. Anything, when you're just doing that, when you're just checking off a box, you're just showing them Sundays, or once or twice a month, just to kind of to say you've done it. Anything real, anything like authentic, any type of growth that we've experienced when it comes to our own personal walks with God, it's always been a result of a daily relationship with Him, but also getting involved. Like it's not just church, it is life. Like it's doing life together. It's being part of a family, part of the family of God, and it's life. So it's not just a place you go once a week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we went all in, like with this group. I mean, we didn't just want to show up on Sundays, like Kevin said. So for us, it made sense that meant that we were showing up at their soccer games on Saturdays, for example. If we were going to be somebody that they could trust, we needed to be in their lives more than just Sundays. So for an hour. So we'd show up at their game on Saturdays. For us, it made sense that we would, after building a relationship with a parent, we'd volunteer to watch their kids so that parents could have a date night.
That's a great idea, by the way.
if anybody wants to do that for us.
I mean, we're all in.
No, but for us also, it meant like we had the kids over. Like we had it for us. It made sense that to plan a slip and slide party in our backyard. I mean, this is before we had kids.
And made our own slip and slide, by the way.
That's right. We made our own slip and slide out of Visqueen and baby shampoo. I think we sprayed baby shampoo all over it to make it slippery.
Yep.
Anyway, so slip and slide parties in the backyard. We would sometimes meet like a cluster of the kids in smaller groups at an ice cream shop. But for us, like that, it just made sense for it to look like that. And so then, needless to say, we made it past our 6-month commitment, kept going. We were locked in. And so they finished their kindergarten year. And through the summer, just really felt like, man, we can't just not be with these kids anymore. So moved up with them to first grade. Continued with them in first grade. Moved up with them to second grade. At some point, this is the part I don't like totally remember. At some point along the lines, they must have felt like we were doing a decent job because they asked us to take on another group of kids. It was like the next age up. I think it might have been when that kindergarten group was in like second grade and they asked us to take third grade on. And so we had a group of second and third graders. They stole our hearts too. And so then we moved up with that group to the third and fourth grade. Anyway, it just kept on going. And it really was life. Like it just all made sense for it to be just a part of everything that we did.
And those kids to this day are now, they're graduating college.
They're
right?
graduating college.
Yeah, that.
Like I know that.
I mean, she told you her age earlier, right? And
I know.
so, I mean, you're not getting any younger.
It's crazy.
So, but yeah, so leading kids, partnering with their parents, it really became a passion of ours really long before we had any intention of doing this as a career. Before we even had our own kids, for that matter. We were perfectly happy investing in those kids' lives, their families' lives at the time, and doing it all on a volunteer basis, right? While I was launching my lucrative real estate career.
That was loaded with sarcasm.
It was because
not super lucrative.
It was during like market crash time. Like
Yeah.
it was not a good time to launch a real estate career.
That was like 2008, 2009.
And so just so you guys know too, like we understand struggles that you have as well as in your families and trying to make ends meet. I even got a part-time job, like getting up and being at PetSmart at 4 a.m. in the mornings to stock shelves before they opened, just to have some income coming in while I was, still developing my lucrative real estate career. Ashley ended up going back to school as well. She eventually graduated from the University of South Alabama as well. Go Jags again.
Go Jags.
That's right. And so she got a political science and a minor in history degree. Once she graduated, she got a job with a nonprofit organization where she worked with adults with disabilities, which was a ton of fun.
That was an awesome job. I missed that. But so all of that was going on, right? And over time, through so many different details that we don't even have time to get into right now, but it was a series of details again and again and again that God used to continue to put on our hearts and make it clear to us that He was, through all of that, preparing us for full-time ministry. And so through all of that, I will never forget the conversation in the car together. I'll try to not talk about it because I will tear up, but there was a particular day where it was us in the car leaving church, and we both knew.
It was quiet.
We both knew exactly what God was telling us and what He had been leading us towards. So it got to the point where we knew that if we didn't follow and do what we felt like He was calling us to do, we would be just miserable.
Yeah.
So.
And so first off, at that point, I decided, I didn't have any formal or further education or instruction on being a pastor or even, leading kids and families other than just the experience we had with that group of kids. So I went back to school. We packed up. We moved to Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville. You got to know it's Louisville, Kentucky, right? And that's where I got a master's degree in discipleship and family ministry. I actually landed my very first kids pastor position. It's another cool story, which we can tell you later. It was at a small church on the outskirts of Louisville in a small town of Bardstown, Kentucky, if you've ever heard of that. It's a pretty small but pretty cool place as well. It was during that time, though, that we first really kind of dove into leading a ministry in thinking about the passage of Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's a really important passage that is on our hearts a lot. This is a passage that Moses is speaking. Moses, he's basically standing there and he's talking to all the people of Israel. This is all of God's people. And as they're about to enter into the promised land that they've heard so much about and been promised to them. And in the passage, God uses Moses in a pretty incredible way to give his people, there's parents there, there's the people of God there, he gives them some instructions, which are the instructions that we're going to be discussing over the next few weeks together throughout this series. We're going to talk about how we, in our own personal story, how we have strived to try to put these instructions into practice in our parenting, in our life. And we even want to tell you guys how we've failed. Because, again, we are not perfect parents by any means. Just because I'm a pastor, just because she's a pastor's wife, it doesn't mean we're perfect. Nobody on our staff is perfect. Nobody in life is perfect. And so we just want you guys to remember that we're gonna talk about our failures as well, because hopefully you can learn from that. Maybe you can just relate to that. Maybe it'll make you just feel a little weight off your shoulders and go, you know what? I've done that too. And we can be in this thing together. And honestly, sometimes it feels like we fail more often than times we get it right.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Like every week, I think I have plenty of moments where I feel like I failed. But I was going to say too, like Kevin was talking about his first position there at that church in Bardstown. And, you know, when we went there and Kevin started that job, we were not parents, but through leading that kids ministry, we felt like that was really, we took what we had learned through our experience at the church in Alabama, and we brought it with us through leading a kids ministry in Kentucky. And Deuteronomy 6 was such a huge part of that, like in terms of how we ministered to parents, because when you're over a kids ministry, it's not just kids. Parents is such a huge part of that. And so we began to really implement that in the way we did ministry, but also just the timeline of when that happened. I became a mom, Kevin became a dad. And so when we became parents, we started to experience it on like an entirely different level. So just to like give you a little bit of an insight into how our parenting journey began, it was the worst. It was honestly, and we've told many, if we've talked with couples about marriage and stuff, like we've done some pre-marriage counseling and things like that, and I always am like super straightforward about that season of our lives, of our marriage, was the hardest. It was really the worst. Like so far. We're 15 years in. We have a long way to go, but when we look back at that, it was so hard, and it had to do with becoming parents. And so, you know, during that time, Kevin was in school, working on his master's degree. Full-time student, yeah. Full-time student. Part-time, he worked 2 different part-time jobs, one of which was the kids pastor position, which like essentially was a full-time job on part-time pay. Anybody that's getting started in ministry, you probably understand what that means. I worked 2 part-time jobs at the time as well, and then we had Oliver in early February 2010. And in addition to all of that, we had owned a house back in Alabama that when we moved to Kentucky, it never sold. So we had the financial burden of paying that mortgage paying our rent in the apartment that we lived in Louisville, trying to make ends meet. We had no family around that we could rely on to help take care of our son when we were going to work. And so we literally passed Oliver back and forth.
Well, part of that too is our church in Bardstown was about a 45-minute drive.
Right.
From where we lived at the seminary in Louisville. So it
wasn't easy to just call, our church was amazing, but it was not easy to just call somebody from church up and say, oh my gosh, I need your help. Can you be here right away? It was like a big, So it was just every single hurdle it felt like we were trying to jump through at that time. And so, in all of that, we were passing a brand new baby back and forth. We were attempting to do everything on our own and yet still somehow keep our heads above water. And so that was the start of our journey. And it was not graceful in the slightest bit. So that was 11 years ago. And some of the same struggles have continued. We're in a whole bunch better place financially. Thank goodness we're not paying mortgage and rent, at the same time and all of that. But the point is, there's always going to be struggles. They may just look different than they were 11 years ago, okay? But due to the changing stages of our kids, they're going to look different. But there's always going to be struggles. In those early days, in those first, I always talk about the first 6 months of parenthood because that was such a vivid time for me as a mother. I cried more than I ever have in my entire life. And I'm not talking cried due to something emotionally touching my heart. I'm talking at my wit's end tears. And I vividly remember in that little apartment in Louisville, multiple occasions where I would have to set down a screaming Oliver in the crib and just step outside on that little patio and just weep. I'm sure that our neighbors thought I was just an emotional wreck because I know that that happened more than once. And the thing is there was a hopelessness attached to it. I had no idea how to fix my crying baby. And I just remember feeling that way. But then eventually then we found ourselves into toddler years, and then another baby, okay? And being just utterly wiped out because you're constantly going and trying to figure out how to discipline or manage sleep issues. That's exhausting, and every parent has been there before. And then now here we are, we told you about the ages of our kids, but we're finding ourselves in a completely new phase. No more preschoolers, no more babies, toddlers, but now suddenly we have this 11-year-old, a preteen, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate hard conversations. I mean, things like sex and puberty and peer pressure, those are real struggles too. They're just different. And so no one has all the perfect answers to any of this. There's no perfect parent. So when we were back to when we were trying to figure out what to even call this series, we literally up until the last minute didn't know what to call it. But we did keep going back to Deuteronomy 6, just because no matter what phase you're in as a parent, it's going to be overwhelming. And I do believe that we're all just grasping for a chance to take a deep breath and simplify where we can. And so I know you know how that is. If you're a parent, you know how that is. We certainly do. We've lived it. We live it on a week-to-week basis. And yeah, thank goodness some of those, early struggles. I tell people all the time, I love the phase we're in. The phase of having babies is precious, but I'm thankful for getting out of that. But anyway.
Everyone has their favorite phases,
Everyone has their favorite phases. I love where we're at right now. But we still have moments where we feel like we're drowning. Even in the phase we're in, we don't have babies and toddlers and preschoolers anymore. And there are many nights where we're going to bed and I just desperately need for things to feel more simple. So yeah, I think we all have those moments.
We do. We all have those moments. And you guys, I guarantee you can relate to that. No matter what age of kids you have, babies, toddlers, elementary, middle schoolers, high schoolers, maybe you've got all those kind of combined together too, however many kids you have. Maybe you only have one kid. There's different challenges in that too.
That's right.
As well. And so, even if your kids are adults now, some of you guys know that your parenting, it really never stops, right? You're still parenting to some degree in some capacity. And so, so we're gonna spend some time over the next 4 weeks, and we're gonna pull apart the pieces of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 12.
Yeah, and I do just want to point out, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, it's going to be like a deep theological study, don't choose to not watch, because I just want to say that we can sometimes glaze over scripture because we feel like maybe it's not relevant to us, and we think about like Deuteronomy, like that's the Old Testament. Sometimes you could feel like that's a heavier, denser part of God's word, but don't write it off as irrelevant in May of 2021. That's one of the things that I personally, even when we came back to Liberty, and we launched Greenbrier, I became a group leader. I wasn't doing the coaching thing. I was leading a group of 4th and 5th graders. And one of the things that I have always loved the most, that's why I'm so passionate about groups at Liberty, is being in a setting where you have an opportunity to help show kids that scripture is relevant to them. Because I just remember being a kid and feeling like, what in the world does this have to do with me, okay? But it's so much the contrary. I'm confident that God, when he formulated what was going to go in the Bible, I really feel like God specifically chose the things that he knew we were going to need. He intentionally put together the pieces that he knew we would need for it to act as a guidebook for us in 2021, an instruction manual, if you will. So, that's what I love about Deuteronomy 6, okay? So God knew it would be hard. He knew parenting was going to be difficult. He knew it was going to have challenges. He knew that we would feel overwhelmed. And I just personally just feel like when it comes to our journey, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to me and my hopelessness I sometimes feel at the end of the day, I just really feel like I need constant reminders that I'm not doing a terrible job. I need constant reminders that we can thrive through these years of raising kids. And Deuteronomy 6, just across the board, continues to be that for me.
Yeah, and Ashley, you're not doing a terrible job.
Thanks.
Yeah, but we do. We look forward to spending the next few weeks with you guys. In fact, I might say this, Ashley. I might say it. Oh, I'm going to say it.
Okay,
But
say it.
But I might say that next week might potentially be the most important episode. Is that what we're calling this? Episodes, I guess. Yeah, but it might be the most important episode for you to watch. So be sure to mark your calendars, tell somebody else about it, share it on social media, let them know about it, tell your neighbors, walk outside, get to know your neighbors, tell your neighbors about it, but let them know about it. But also along the way, please don't hesitate. Number one, share your story. If you got questions, ask them, even if they're personal. That's what I love kind of about what we're beginning to do here in these Wednesday nights at Liberty is, we are able to really have these connections that we're able to make that you may not really get to make sometimes on a busy Sunday morning. At least I know for us personally that we get to make with you guys too. So obviously it's on the screen, but we'd love to make those connections with you as well. And it's conversations that we can have as a result of that connection. So you can type what you want to say in the comments down below. You can send us either one of us direct messages on Facebook or Instagram as well. You could even email us. Ashley is just a.litton@libertylive.church, and me, Kevin, it's just k.litton@libertylive.church. But I can't stress enough how important it is. It is so important that you understand that we are not going to be here over these next few weeks to beat you down as parents. That is not our goal. We're not trying to make it more overwhelming for you for all the things that you have in your life going on. We understand we have something every night of the week, with our kids and our family. And then it's a busy weekend as well. So we understand the busyness. We understand the weight of parenting. We do understand that. So instead of beating you down, we want to be here to help you. We want to be here to walk alongside you. We want to be here to partner with you in this.
That's exactly right. So, all of that to say, we hope you tune in next Wednesday, 7 p.m. And also, if that time doesn't work, I can't remember if you said this or not. If that time doesn't work for you, you can always go back and watch it on here. So if you are covered in kids at 7 p.m., it's fine because you can go back and watch it. So we just, we hope you do go back and pull it up and join us and hear what we have to say. But before that, before we end, okay, we do want to leave you with some things to think about because we understand that this might be a study maybe that you're gonna go through with a group of friends. I don't know. Like we host a group at our house on Monday nights, but like maybe you're not able to be in a group right now. And if this is something that you could join some other friends of yours, even if it's online, even if it's through Zoom, you could commit to watching this together, other parents. And then maybe these you want to discuss things together afterwards. We love our group just in that, we are in a group with a bunch of other parents. And it is so good to be able to support each other and bounce ideas off of each other and pray for each other and walk alongside each other. I mean, we really do that with our group. Some of the people in our group live across the street from us and next door. And so we know that community is super important. So maybe this is something that you and your group could do together. If you don't have a group, maybe find one.
But that's where we find that it's not just church, it's life. That's where we do life together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But maybe this is something that you and your spouse are going through. Maybe you're dealing with some of your own struggles. Not maybe, everybody's dealing with their own struggles, but maybe that's what drew you to this. So maybe you and your spouse are watching this together, and if so, I love that. And we're going to have some things for you guys to discuss as a couple together. But maybe you're a single parent, and this applies to you too. This is for every single kind of parent. Maybe you're a grandparent that is right now taking care of your grandkids. This applies to you too. So maybe you just happened to scroll in your news feed. Is that what they call it? News feed on Facebook, and you know us, and you said, "Oh, what are Kevin and Ashley talking about?" If you're still listening, then that means you're watching this. So I encourage you to come back again next Wednesday at 7. But regardless of what brought you here, we are so glad that you took the time to be here with us.
And with that, as we end tonight, we're gonna put some at the end. There's gonna be some questions that are gonna be up on the screen that we'll leave you with to just ponder, to think about. It's just 4 simple questions. And one of those things I'll just tell you right now is to go and read Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 to 12, and then pray and ask God as you go through this series over the next few weeks to lead you to what He wants you to do, to show you how you can maybe simplify some things, to show you some practical ideas, because that's really what we want to do. Is we want to be practical about these things and not just give you some like high and mighty kind of a principle and just leave you with that. We want to be more practical. We want to be more real with you and talk to you about our struggles as well. So we want to say thanks for joining us tonight, and we look forward over the next few weeks to do this together.
That's right. All right. We'll see you next Wednesday.